Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari, and with me today is...
Christopher Robinson.
All right, Christopher, what movie are we going to overanalyze this week?
We're going to overanalyze Operation Finale.
So, director Chris Weitz's historical thriller is based on the story of how a group of Israeli secret agents arrested notorious SS officer Adolf Eichmann, played by Ben Kingsley, the man who masterminded the final solution in Argentina. Oscar Isaac plays the legendary Mossad agent Peter Malkin. After tracking Eichmann down to Buenos Aires, Malkin and his men captured him and brought him to Israel for a historic 8-month trial. What did you think?
I am so sorry for recommending this.
Yeah, it was the poor man's Munich, as I would put it.
Okay. Yeah, it was... I don't know. I mean, maybe because I like too many spy movies, but this was just...
Bad.
I can see why it got not very good reviews. I mean, Oscar Isaac...
I didn't actually get very many reviews. Did you notice that? Like, it wasn't...
Huh.
Like, when I went on a review search to some of, like, my basic outlets... A lot of people just hadn't even bothered to see it. So it's not, I don't know how well it's doing. Not very well, I would think.
I don't think it's doing well.
Being a little bit more critical. What didn't you like about it?
They made it...
So many things.
Yeah. The cinematography was workmanlike. I guess it was okay. But it just was really felt really... I mean, it felt really sloppy. And it felt kind of rote in that the whole, like, the love story edition. Can I just start with, like, how it was not historically, it took a lot of liberties historically?
Sure.
Like,
and you know my complaint about yucky love stuff. And so the person I saw it with complained, like, okay, they just switched an actual man's role to a woman's role just to add this, like, bizarro love story. And I was like, if they wanted to make it just not all dudes, that would have been fine. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that entire time, okay, Nicole's going to complain about yucky love stuff. It was completely stupid. And historically there was a woman on the team, but she had a different role. So I guess they had to add a important... It was stupid. I mean, like, and then that ruined going and watching the movie. That one of the things that was ruining it for me is like, okay, no, there's no way they would put like a couple together on such an important mission. And like things kept ruining for like this guy, like, oh, I'm a maverick and things like that. I'm thinking, no, there's no way there would be so much lack of cohesion for the team for a mission this important. And that kept hurting it every time I was watching it. So it's like, it kept pulling me out because there's no way you would have a hothead who would be talking like this or this maverick who doesn't follow the rules with something this important.
Yeah, so building on that, like one of the things that really frustrated me, and this is actually really common in spy things, and poorer-made spy things, is like, you know, there's this pivotal moment where, like, Ben Kingsley as Adolf Eichmann totally gets under this Mossad agent's skin and he loses his temper. And I'm like, spies are trained for this. They have spy training so that they are not emotional. What makes a good spy is someone who is completely and utterly able to compartmentalize.
And it's just, like, it was just like what a spy would never give as a real information to them whole, like, oh, the argument between him and the interrogator, they would follow orders and they would follow rules and they would do good cop, bad cop or something like that. Not that, oh, I'm doing it behind the guy's back and I'm actually going to solve this. It's like, what the heck? It was just very, very frustrating about how slapdash it made this feel. And I know the actual thing was a lot more complicated and it was a lot more tightly paced. And I don't understand why people didn't want to see that instead of this ridiculously added on conflict that didn't need to exist.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I just, again, it makes the Mossad look like bumbling idiots who somehow managed to pull something off, like, almost by accident rather than the trained, skilled professionals that they were to pull something off.
I mean, it might be that I just watched too much NCIS, but and like 24, but no one ever would consider Mossad to be bumbling. They're the scary guys. They're really, really good at their jobs. And like this one was showing them not. It was like, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's why like my first reference went back to Munich. Because first of all, what Munich did well, which is actually usually a complaint about Spielberg, but he kept it tight this time, was like, there's no emotion in it. It just, here's the mission, and it just executes.
Right.
And it's tightly timelined. It's incredibly paced, but that is, I mean, Spielberg does an action movie unlike any other, right? Like, he knows how to do the pacing and the editing. And it's just like, here are people who are really good at their jobs going out and doing something complicated, and this is a movie of it. And that's what this movie needed to be, and it just wasn't.
My wife, Kama, she mentioned, and when I was talking to her about this being, they tried to, at least tried to make him like Hannibal Lecter, Eichmann, that he has to have this, like, that moment where he gets under the guy's skin and he's super smart and things like that. No, that
didn't happen.
Follow the history. Yeah,
exactly.
Follow the history.
I was like, no, that didn't happen. Totally.
I mean, he's a whole part about the banality of evil. And, like, they could have just aimed for that. This whole meek man who actually did all these horrible things. That would have been a more important story than this, like, guy having this face-off with this other Mossad agent. Ugh.
Yeah. So, like, a couple of, like, nitpicks and complaints, too. Like, again, the editing was off. It really didn't know how to ramp up the tension. It threw in a lot of, like, plot-wise, it threw in a lot of last-minute, oh, no, now this is going wrong, things that just seem totally ridiculous. One, they make a point early in the movie to say that they've got help from the local Jews. And then they introduce this ridiculous plot line that one of the, like, women who's helping them out steals money from them to go and then gets caught by the police and tortured.
Right.
And I'm like, these are local Jews. Like, I'm not even of this generation. Like, I'm a generation removed. And as a Jew, I wouldn't screw up a Mossad assignment to catch Adolf Eichmann to steal, whatever, $100. Like, there's just no way a Jewish person would be like, let me sell out this mission. Like, come on.
To be fair, well, actually, I can't even defend it. It was really stupid, and, like, women were not shown in a great light in this movie. I think that Sylvia Herman, like, in the real story, she should have more prominence about all the stuff that she did, and how the Herman family did not get rewarded as they should have for all they did. In the real life, it took 2 years for Mossad to finally believe them.
Right.
And they kind of went over it. But, like, that thing was just stupid. Like, it was just stupid. Like, the whole added conflict so they could be running away, chasing away, and this whole, oh, we can't get on the plane, and we're going to get separated. And then, like, when they were, like, breaking into the cars and getting the new car, thinking, there's a car right down the street. Couldn't you just break into that car as well? And then, like, yeah, they could both leave, except no, we have to leave them behind. And it was all this, that felt like suffering for the sake of suffering.
Yeah, it was trying to ramp up tension, again, through emotion. And it's like, there didn't need to be a ramp up of tension through emotion. There could have just been a ramp up of, it's a movie. Right. You can ramp up tension really easily with editing and music alone.
Yeah, there was a woman who actually had that happen to her. She had a swastika carved into her chest in Argentina, but it wasn't. At least it wasn't related to them. She did not work for the Mossad or anything like that. So it was just like it just felt kind of wrong that she's got to get her comeuppance for turning against her people, and it's like it just felt it's icky political stuff when you get into that.
Exactly. And then the fact that Klaus Eichmann has been authorized by the police to be on this hunt and carry a gun is just like the most ridiculous thing ever. Second of all, like, it's true in the real story, like, they didn't trust the Argentine government to handle this. Like, they did this without telling anybody. They didn't trust Germany or Argentina to help them catch Adolf Eichmann. But actually having the Argentine police, like, complicit in trying to get him back.
Yeah, a major politician being complicit, that was like, eee. When they had that major politician being complicit and the Argentine government the local Argentine government being complicit was
a little
problematic.
Unfair. Yeah, like, okay, their hands are not clean. We all know that Argentina housed a lot of ex-Nazis, but to say, I don't know, that just struck me as, like, unfair.
And then this whole, we're going to use, and like, Eichmann, you could help us. We can restart our policy of forums and that whole thing, that this was like a clear and present danger type thing they were doing with, like, we glad you stopped Eichmann before he could kill again type thing they did in the story was stupid.
It was super stupid.
Yeah.
And then on terms of, you brought up the cinematography. I mean, there's a reoccurring image of the stain that won't come out. I was like, this is a little on the nose, people.
Goodness.
The cinematography, and then like the shaking car to show confusion in the beginning. Like the cinematography was so beat you over the head obvious. It was just terrible.
And then with his whole sister thing.
Oh, that part really got on my nerves.
Just like, seriously? Okay, really? You're going to just keep hitting us with a hammer, no subtlety whatsoever. It was just frustrating because his sister, the protagonist's sister, was killed during the Holocaust. So she keeps popping up in the movie again and again and again.
Well, and then, so there's like a plot element where he promises on the grave of his sister that he's going to let Adolf Eichmann see his wife again. So 2 things. Like, first of all, that's like a very Christian idea. Second of all, if it were my sister, who's also Jewish and also dead, she would not want me to keep that promise. Like, she would be like, "Oh, F that!" Like,
oh no, you could totally screw him over. That's fine.
Like, on the grave of my sister, who would totally want me to break this promise. Like, I sort of was like, that was just a ridiculous thing that he would make this promise on his sister's grave, and it was like, why would he keep it? Like, why would his sister want him to keep it?
Why would he give her real name? And that kept hurting me. Like he gave his real name. He gave this thing.
Like that's not what spies do. I'm sorry.
Or the hothead who kept like we should beat it out of him.
Oh yeah, the Maverick. And that dude got so much praise in the reviews, and I was like, that was just dumb.
No, like, and then this whole thing is that he wants to do the whole scar competition. How many people did you lose? I'm thinking, we're all on this team. We all know that we're kind of there's a reason why we're on this type of team, because this is what we do.
Yeah.
We've all lost somebody. It was just frustrating. It was just frustrating and bad. Not good.
And then, so the last, point I want to make, there's something about choral music, like young choral music, like the voices. I'm like, this is just really Christianic to me. This is like a lot of Christianness in a movie that's about Jews. Like, I just found like...
Maybe went to clip art or something, or clip music.
There's certainly a lot of singing in Jewish services. In fact, some of them are all sung. Like, that's why you have the cantor who sings. But still, I was like, I just equate choral music like that with church. And it just seemed like a really weird choice to have all this, like, choral music in a movie about Holocaust victims. Like, I don't know. It just was, like, a weird tone problem.
Yeah, I mean, I was just... My mom liked it.
Did you?
She wants to compare it, but The Boys from Brazil was much better, which is another Nazi hunter movie. I
just don't know. I mean, there's just not a lot more to say about the movie itself. I mean, it was so meh. Like, it just really didn't know what it was doing.
So meh, so not historically accurate, adding drama for Hollywood's sake, which is just really frustrating. I mean, like, Argo was kind of like that as well. They added extra drama because it wasn't dramatic enough. Which is, I just get frustrated when they do things like that. Right.
I mean, again, using emotion to try to build up drama or suspense, like, you don't need emotion to do it. This could have been unemotional. And remember me saying this when I come back to my recommendation at the end of the episode. All right. So... Nazis. Let's talk about Nazis. They kind of never go away.
Yeah, it's kind of consistent. Nazism is, yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I guess they're trying to make this topical, because there is research in Nazism and like fascism. I just wish it was done better. Like the whole point of don't forget your history and make sure we don't forget that was one thing they talked about in this story. But like you said, you can have different types of Nazis. I guess they had a type of Nazi they wanted to put in this movie, and I don't think it really worked with showing the breadth of Nazism.
Right. And I think, so there's a couple things. And you kind of brought up the most famous quote about Adolf Eichmann from Hannah Arendt calling it the banality of evil. And so there's been a lot of, like, uproar about all these, like, think pieces about your favorite, neighborhood Nazi, right? New York Times particularly came in for some excoriation. We've already talked about that NPR interview with Jason Kessler, which they never should have done.
Yeah, Nicole was really, really upset about that. I finally read thinking, wow, that was good job on you guys giving him a platform. Kudos.
Well, since this movie was about Mossad agents, I will point out for people who didn't listen to the interview, Jason Kessler did something really bizarre and funny, if you think about it, which was like my big point of contention. So he's trying to come across as totally not a Nazi, totally not. So he gives you the like breakdown genetically of superior intelligence. Number 1 are the Ashkenazi Jews. Number 2 are the Asians. He doesn't go to number 3. But that's like a lot of people ahead of Sephardic Jews, which I'm sure he doesn't know the word and just randomly picked Ashkenazi Jews. But I thought it was really funny because like everyone in Israel is like, oh, hell no. Like, those Yiddish-speaking mofos are not smarter than us. Like, it's because it's funny, like, if you actually know anything about Judaism, like, the Ashkenazi Jews were, like, the lesser than. They were the diluted blood. They were the, the ones who spoke the sort of bastardized language of Yiddish, not real Hebrew. Oh, actually, this brings up something I wanted to talk about in the movie. I'll get back to this, but I was remiss in not pointing out something that bothered me horribly and the friend I saw it with, which is 2018 is way too late to have a movie be entirely in English. It made no sense. They would randomly mix in Spanish here or there. And my friend and I were talking about like, 60s Israel, like what language would they all actually be speaking?
Right.
Like, I'm not entirely clear if everybody was on Hebrew at that point.
Right.
But who knows? Because the movie just handled that so badly. And it was really embarrassing how some people had American accents and some people didn't. And it was just
Train wreck?
It was a train wreck.
Yeah.
It was just, we don't do this anymore.
Right.
This is a very like 80s style way of looking at this.
People read subtitles now.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you don't even need subtitles. You can just like, if you film it well enough, people can understand what's happening without knowing the language.
Exactly. But so back to what I was saying. So there've been a lot of like think pieces, and I think what they're trying to do is to show the banality of evil, and I would argue that they're utterly failing.
I 100% agree with you. They utterly failed.
It just ended up like making everybody really angry.
Yeah, it comes back to that whole thing is that it comes back to the author. Oh yeah, he's going to be super friendly and nice to you. Might not be so friendly and nice to me. Or if he is, we still are going to have some issues. Because like, he'll tell you how he really feels and stuff like that and try to mask it under intellectualism. But no, it's still hatred, and you still would rather me not exist. So, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, again, in sort of like remembering the lessons of history and stuff, like, I mean, certainly, I've always been taught no one is trustworthy. Like, anyone can turn on you at any moment. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of minorities go for the same thing about be wary and be careful, because like they can and will turn on you. So it was just, yeah, it's just like saying like, oh, you realize they're bad now. Oh, and like I'm thinking like, no, we kind of knew this the entire time. It's kind of like the whole, how for a longest period of, at least when I was growing up, people kept trying to push the myth of the lost cause, or the myth of that it was about Civil War was about states' rights.
Oh yeah,
and like
the War of Northern Aggression.
And War of Northern
I went to school in North Carolina. As a Yankee, that was a pretty shocking way to describe it.
And like Silent Sam, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just no, and like thankfully people have been pushing back at that more and more than hopefully that this, but people keep trying to push these false narratives or these false stories and trying to restructure it to this, restructure it that it isn't so bad, or it's reasonable. And I think we have to keep pushing back that nope, not reasonable. Nope, can't. Oh, you want me to empathize with them?
Yes, that's the point. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to. So what they were, again, if their intent was to show the banality of evil, what they ended up writing was evil. Like it's easy to empathize with evil, and it's right. Like. I like you put that perfectly. There was an empathy there that the rest of us are like, what?
No, I mean, like, you could empathize because he's not actively trying to kill you.
Right.
He's actively trying to kill us. It's kind of harder for us.
Yeah, and it's also like, I also find too with anti-Semitism, like Jews are in a really weird position with discrimination. I don't know if you heard this case where the guy is ethnically Jewish. He converted to, I believe it was Catholicism, and then he wanted to be, he applied for a job, and they were like, no, you're Jewish.
Right, I heard about that case, and that's going to be interesting how they're going, because they're saying he's biologically Jewish. I mean, sorry, the person who was discriminating against him was saying he's biologically Jewish.
Right. Which is a really weird corner of discrimination law, because discrimination law is race, color, religion. Well, they can't get him on religion, right? Because he's a converted Catholic. And they didn't discriminate him against the Catholic, but they were discriminating him basically on his race.
Correct. Being
Jewish, which, as we all know, and has been somewhat an interesting problem or issue, is that for the most part, although by all means not in totality, Jews are white.
Recently, yes, but yeah.
Well, again, there are African, like there are Jews all over the world. There are Jews of color, like that is a thing. It totally exists. Like I don't want to write out of history, like anybody whose Jewish background is actually of a person of color. Generally, especially in America, Jews are white.
Right, and the whole thing about Jews being a race has been one of those things that have been stated many a time. And it's, it gets, like I said, it gets kind of complicated because there's people who are culturally Jewish or who might not be ethnically Jewish. It's complicated.
It is complicated. And I remember my friends from Ireland, I would describe myself as Jewish and Italian, and they were like, why don't you describe yourself as Russian/Polish and Italian?
Right.
And I was like, I ain't Russian, dude. I mean, honestly, my mom's native language is Yiddish. Yiddish is explicitly a Jewish language.
Right.
Like, I'm not Russian. Like, that's, and in fact, I had genetic testing, and I'm really not Russian. Like,
I actually had more Russian than you did.
Yeah. So, like, ethnically, we are our own people, and so then our sense of discrimination and our alliance with other sort of oppressed people really puts us in an odd category. Like, anti-Semitism exists, and you talk about microaggressions, and we can argue till the cows come home, but I actually really hate it when people make an assumption that I'm Christian.
Right.
And hit me with,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, but Merry Christmas,
I know, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. I'll be honest. I don't like it. It's not that hard to just say frickin' happy holidays. But also just, like, Jesus-y stuff. Like, Jesus blesses you. I'm like, I mean, Jesus was my people, but, no.
Now, to be fair, I also, that's one of my, as a Christian, I get kind of, it's one of my sensitive areas. when people use the Lord's name in vain and they aren't Christian, which makes it even worse. I'm thinking, why are you doing this? I wouldn't do this to you. I wouldn't use other people's names in vain since it means to me. Why are you doing this to me? Because it's like one of those microaggressions. It's not really a big thing, but it's just like, yeah, just be respectful.
I totally agree. In fact, like I had a coworker who would go like use a bunch of curse words, and I always am like, look, there's a line, and you just don't use G.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn it. Like, you just don't use it.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. It's super offensive to anybody who
religious, exactly,
does believe in a God, and I'm just like, why would you do that? Like,
yeah, you could use, like, if you want to use the F word, sure, go with that.
Yeah,
like I said, I have no problem using, but yeah, you don't need to use the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah, but so I do think on the one hand, we have a lot of white privilege and we move through the world as white people, and there's a whole lot of discrimination that we don't get. But on the other hand, I think oftentimes people seriously discount how much of a Christian nation America still is, and how much we move through the world and are constantly being othered as not fitting into a Christian, for people like Pence and Jeff Sessions, a Christian nation. Agreed.
And like I actually read a letter to a Christian nation, I think it was by Richard Harris, and makes some good points. I disagree with him about a lot of things, but you're right that a lot of the world, we take it for granted that people need to fit into the box that we want them to. That we have to promote that, hey, America is all Christian and everything like that, which is silly when you think about what we're trying to aim towards, allow multiple different creeds to exist.
But having said that, like, it's interesting, we did have a conversation with your wife recently, so you and I...
Oh, we get to,
both grew up with lots of Jews, like...
Yes.
And we're really only like 3% of the population. And she was like, I just really
You
never...
said 3%, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
She was really like, I never...
Yeah, I mean...
really knew anybody Jewish growing up, or, like, again, one person really doesn't have an effect on a culture, like, if you're the only one.
Exactly, versus, I mean, it's just like with a lot of different groups. If, like, you only know one black person growing up, you're going to assume all the black people act like that. Unfortunately, because we like to classify things like that.
Right.
Same thing as if you know a whole different variety of Jewish people, you realize, hey, there's a whole variety of Jewish people.
Right. And if you grow up in an area where...
Washington, D.C. or
suburban New York. But if you grow up in an area where there's not that critical mass of population and you're doing things like saying a prayer before every sports game...
Right.
The one Jewish person is not going to feel comfortable being like, I don't really want to pray to Jesus right now. Like, if you're a small enough minority, you're not going to speak out. So you're just going to grow up in a way thinking like, this is totally normal. And I'm not aware of any sensitivities that are around me because people are not in a critical enough mass that they're going to complain. Right.
Like, I don't want to sing about Dixie. I just don't. No.
Thank you for putting that song in my head. Yeah. So I often think like, I'm certainly not glad about the Nazi resurgence at all. But I do think that Jews in America did kind of reach a place of complacency, a place where they thought that, or we thought that we were safe. I am excluding myself because, again, my mother has taught me my entire life, and I think it's somewhat of a generational thing, in that she's older and she was born like at the tail end of World War II, but, lost family and all that stuff. Like, that generation made sure to bring up their children to say, like, never forget the Holocaust. They built the freaking Holocaust Museum, to say this can happen at any time.
Yeah, I was one of the first, my class was one of the first classes to go to the Holocaust Museum when it first opened because they were testing things out. And I was DCPS, so we were able to do that. But, like, it feels like it's... I think minorities, like Jewish, I think a lot of Jewish people didn't forget, or at least I might be, but it's just more like the Gentiles who forgot, like, or non-minorities forgot, oh crap, Nazism is really easy to come back if you don't stomp it out as quickly as possible. You have to always be vigilant for it. Because a lot of people are surprised that there's no way Trump will win. Or there's no way white people are marching with, like, saying blood and soil down the streets of Charlottesville. I'm thinking, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think that's, again, where the dichotomy of the sort of the white privilege, but then the religious minority or ethnic minority kind of overlaps in that we don't necessarily have, especially if we grew up in areas where there's a critical mass of us, we don't necessarily have that constant reminder of being other and of, like, we're not welcome here. So that I think because we have this sort of white privilege, it's easier for us. I think it was easier for us to sort of get comfortable.
Yeah, I kind of had that with in California because of, unfortunately, some of my Asian friends, they grew up as a sizable minority, so they were used to, like, different, used to general treatment, and then when they had that, unfortunate that the cold hand of racism hit them, and they were, like, all shocked and surprised, like, what the heck, where did this come from? Yeah. And then you would say, yeah, sorry you had to join the club, buddy, but it happens.
It does happen, and we are all in the club, and I think, too, like, there has been some discussion about this, but, like, look, if you're talking Nazis, like, you're talking anti-Semitism.
Yep.
And they will for sure come for the black people first. No doubt. It's not, like, I'm not going to argue that it's equal, but at some point, like, the discussion of how many people have you lost in the Holocaust, equal doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're coming for all of us. Like,
what about that great poem about when they... I was like,
oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah, just like they came for this person, and then I didn't say anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, and again, like I mean, I look at Jared Kushner, and I think there were so many wealthy, well-connected Jews in Germany that thought the same thing,
that they were going to be okay.
They were going to be protected, and they weren't.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. This thing that nope. I mean. I'm going to bring up some Star Trek, DS9, with the whole hatred of the collaborator. And I think that's one of the whole things that a lot of groups have, a lot of minority groups. I mean, African Americans use the term Uncle Tom. I don't know if there's a term for but the hatred of the collaborator or someone.
There is, and I can't think of it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that we have to continue to be vigilant and just realize that we got to look out for each other, and realize that if they start with one group, they're attacking immigrants, which seems to be American pastime, because at any time we're always attacking immigrants. First, it was
which ironically is the one thing you're not a part of.
Fair enough.
It's like the weird anti-immigrant thing definitely has a racial element rather, and it's like, but the black people were here and they didn't immigrate. Well, some of them.
My wife's family, remember, are from Liberia.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely, and there's a West Indian. There's all kinds of immigrants. Totally. Yeah,
and like the whole that's coming up about like crap holes. Like, why don't we get people from nice countries from our president? It's. Yeah, we get to look out for immigrants, because they'll start off with immigrants, but they'll get down to other groups sooner or later once they get rid of that scapegoat. I mean, like, they had issues with the Irish immigrants and the Italian immigrants, and they'll just go through the Middle Eastern, not the Middle Eastern, well, yeah, they have Middle Eastern immigrants, and then
the 7 banned countries, yeah.
Exactly. So it's just nature that they're finding a scapegoat for hopefully making the majority, quote unquote, feel better.
Right. And, we talked about, privately, like, we talked about what it feels like when you see a Make America Great Again hat. And it just is like a forceful reminder for both of us that someone is saying, you don't belong here. You're not a real American because you're not Christian, because you're not white, because you have an immigrant background. I mean, honestly, I would probably... I'm not a member of this community, but if I were gay or trans, or I'd still see that hat and think they're coming for me too.
Exactly.
Right?
And, I mean, that's the whole thing with the Supreme Court nomination now. They're concerned about. That's the whole mess in itself. But it makes
not open up that can of worms.
Yeah, we're not going to open up that can of worms. But it's just the hat means something, and
it means something to the people who wear it, and it means something to the people who see it.
Exactly. And to pretend otherwise is just not being honest. Because make America, like someone, this has been said many times, but make America great again. For a lot of people, this right now is a lot better than any time in history it was for us. It was significantly better. Because if we go back in time, like reasons why go back in time, no, it was definitely worse. I mean, one of the great things that I've seen is that homosexuality is much more tolerated than it was during my lifetime when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. People used slurs back then. And now you can actually see people walking on the street holding hands, which is incredible for me. Even though I grew up in D.C., we have a large homosexual population. I'm just so happy that it's becoming more and more blasé. It's no longer a surprise to see people walking down holding hands of the same sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, wrapping it all up and circling back to Operation Finale, do we want to just give it our lowest social impact scores and move on to recommendations?
I mean, the one thing good about it is that, like, the real Operation Finale was very important to reminding people, the youth, about the importance of knowing your history and knowing what the evil that's happened. So that's important. I'm glad that I watched Operation Finale so I read more about the Eichmann trial.
Yeah, I had my eyes closed. Y'all, I mean, I had like a nervous breakdown the one time I saw a Holocaust documentary called Night and Fog. Like, No joke. It was hysterical, and they had to take me out of class. Like, can't handle that kind of stuff. I've never been to the Holocaust Museum. I will never tour a concentration camp. Yeah. Like, I don't have the emotional fortitude.
But at least you know about it, though.
Well, yeah. But, so I guess, then I'll give it a 2. I mean, I'm like, there's such a heavy deduction of points for how poorly made this movie was.
I agree. I mean, like, a 2, I don't think it's going to be remembered during Oscar time or anything. What's really frustrating is that there could have been a better story. I would like to find more about Sylvia Herman and her father and them spending 2 years trying to convince the Mossad to, like, come and then Eichmann's here. That would have been a more interesting story.
Yeah, if they just told the actual story, it would have been a better movie.
So I'm going to give this a 2 as well, because I can't give it a 1, because like you said, it's history is an important part of history. I just wish it was told better.
Yeah. Recommendations for the week?
Well, I had to cleanse my palate with another spy thriller, which is fictional, but I enjoyed it a lot more. Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. Very enjoyable.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah, I'm going to get her name completely wrong. But, it was a very enjoyable, good spy thriller. Fun.
Cool. Well, I'm going to recommend, because it really nails this point home so well, it was an HBO movie called Conspiracy.
Okay.
It's with Stanley Tucci and Kenneth Branagh and a bunch of other famous people. Huh. And it's a fictional rendering of the meeting that took place to implement the final solution.
Okay.
And It's literally done as if you're in a work conference room and they keep the tone of the movie incredibly casual as they're talking about exterminating people.
Right.
It's so well done.
That sounds well done.
So check that out. Much better movie. Also check out Munich. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, take a second to leave a review on iTunes, recommend it to your friends, check out our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes. Don't forget to visit our store and buy a cool t-shirt. If you want to talk to us, leave a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter with our tag at Movies Matter Pod. As always, check Thursday is when we post what movie we're going to do next, so you know, off Thursdays of the episode, so you know what to go watch. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.